Declan, we just watched Dublin beat Roscommon 226 to 14 points. As damp a squib as you'll ever see.
Yeah, and unfortunately for people looking on, that is the way at the minute with most Dublin games. It's only really when you reach the Ireland semi-final and the occasional, well, the one game in Oma was competitive last year to an extent, but that's just the story of Dublin's excellence, and they're not to be blamed for that either. They were typically ruthless in everything they did. Goal in the first half, Michael Macaulay putting the ball in the net there in the second half. The game was long over by that stage. Their excellence in every single thing that they do, every department, it can't be faulted.
I kind of think it's almost like you never watch a Premier League football or La Liga or whatever, and their just ability to do the typical things that make them look so simple, like controlling the ball under such pressure and have the sort of patience to give off the right pass at the right time.
Their ability to avoid contact is just it's wondrous, like, because it can look a little bit pedestrian, but really what they're doing is they're never really taking ball into contact. That means they're never really getting their energy sapped, and they've always got options behind, like, and they always seem to be very organised in how they have the fella just waiting for the pop pass out the back to get them out of trouble. But again, if you look at their shots and their scores and where they're all coming from, their efficiency in getting into the centre of scoring channel is frightening. But that is because, like, you know, in the Tyrone game, for example, you could hear up in the 7th floor of Croke Park here, Matty Donnelly at one stage started effing blaming his teammates to get some movement going, movement, let's get it going. But in Dublin they're all zipping every direction, which makes it extremely hard to pick up, and also they're creating space for others to run into. It's wondrous.
Yeah, and like you mentioned that Tyrone game against Cork. Cork in the first half, they had that similar patience to not just do something silly on the ball and hold on to it, wait for that gap to open like Dublin do. In the second half they didn't.
In Maurice Brosnan on Balls.ie put out a brilliant tweet. Sean White had over 30 possessions in the first half alone, which is just astonishing numbers. Yeah. But the second goal, James Lockery's goal, they had 23 hand passes, which is very kind of un-Cork, like, or unlike a team that would be said to be low on confidence. If you can hold the ball for 23 passes against a packed defence, work your way patiently until you get that. Yeah, they're totally un-Cork. You know, you have to kind of wonder what are they doing in Division 3, because their first half was absolutely brilliant. But again, Tyrone were lacking in a point of reference. Like, you know, Cal McShane was being well looked after, so therefore what did they have? Bit of a running game at one point, like, especially towards the end of the second half. Maybe it was, as we call, learnings that they picked up against just before half time in Dublin when they had their slump. There was 15 Cork men back inside their 45. They were not going to concede before half time. But Matty Donnelly being pushed up in the full forward line in the second half, he bent the game to as well. It was almost like, was it Henry Shefflin in the replay against 2012 against Galway? Like, Henry Shefflin just decided we're not going to get beat today, and he completely controlled the game. Matty Donnelly did that. 3 points from play himself. He was fouled for maybe 3 frees at Cal McShane.
He won the penalty, and he also did the initial break that allowed Michael McKernan to set up the goal for McShane as well. So he completely turned the game.
Oh, he was sensational. And then you got to wonder, you know, this is, as Matty said in the post-match interviews, then it was something that we had did a lot in the league, you know, with a different shape. So are they going to maybe do that against Dublin and Oma, or is it like, you know, a wild card that they're going to leave for possibly meeting them further on down the line? Do they go bald-headed now and try and win that game in Oma, but that would be their second time beating Dublin in a year? Or do they try and give the fringe players, there's a multitude of fascinations about that game.
And there's probably an obvious tie-over in terms or comparison with, like, if you look at the Munster Hurling Championship this year, Tip had a shot at Limerick, the champions, in a game that didn't matter, probably put too much into it, got some big injuries, and then got smashed when they met him a couple of weeks later as well. Yes. So for Tyrone, would you be almost like, we're through, we don't need to expend too much energy, especially after 5 weekends in a row?
Yeah, and Brian McGuigan says the other day, you know, do you want to play the second place team in Group 1, isn't it? The Donegal Kerry, whoever comes out of that group, Meath possibly, Mayo. Like, you know, are you better off taking the defeat and giving some game time to people who've been in and around it, or do you play? You know, you have what, they have 15 days now until they play Dublin. Like, I mean, that's significant recovery time. Like, there's no complaints about that. But they are coming off a run where they had 5 games in 5 weeks, and every one of them were away from home. And like the travel involved and the stresses they were under were significant. And I think it did show in the first half that maybe they just took a wee while to refamiliarise themselves with Croke Park. But just once they got it going, like, you know, I mean, we had a 3-minute spell. The first goal came where they just did that typical method of, you know, a palm goal at the back post. After that, Niall Sludden won a turnover. Matty Donnelly won the free off that. Peter Hart got the free, and then Richie Donnelly caught the next kick out, and they worked it in then. And Cork's Matty Taylor took down Niall Sludden for the penalty. Yeah. So I mean, you know, talk about a devastating 3 minutes for Cork.
Cork had been 5 points up at half time. They'd been 7 up even before that. It looked like they were going well. I think there was just a mini panic during that period where, you know, they conceded the first goal. Then I think was it Matty Taylor? Yeah, that silly giveaway there. Then a long kick out straight out to Richie Donnelly. It was kind of like, I know you've mentioned all those, but it just felt like implosion. And then it almost felt like Tyrone had him at arm's length for the rest of the game. It felt that way.
I know Cork drew level twice after that, but yet the momentum had switched so far. And also there may be a little part of the Tyrone's conditioning it's off the charts. I mean, they're probably second in Dublin in terms of conditioning because they have had such continuity, like, you know, of Peter Donnelly, who'll be
him going
lamented, like, absolutely.
To Ulster Rugby.
Ulster Rugby's academy, I think, is the project he's going for. You know, people like Peter Donnelly they're not laying around everywhere. Somebody said to me on Twitter there the other day that, you know, there would be loads of people that are well equipped to do this job, and well, I don't know how you say that, because this is a guy that has played in All-Ireland underage teams with Tyrone. He has won an All-Ireland with Tyrone, like, as a senior footballer. And it's also that little bit of, like, we're Tyrone people, and he's playing goals for Cull Island and coming up against them all the time, and, like, you know, just how well got he was, like, and there's no doubt about it. He was definitely, I would imagine, offering something tactically, certainly as a sounding board too. So, like, he's still here.
To know more so what a player needs to be equipped with out on the field, because he's still in that environment himself and grew up in it.
Absolutely. So they're no just like off-the-shelf strength and conditioning coach that they're going to get, but the work that they have done for the last 5 seasons under him, I think that told a wee bit, because they were still confident, they were still driving forward. Like, you know, we're possibly doing Cork a little bit of disservice. Luke Connolly had a goal chance. There was goal chances in the end. Like, they failed really to get the grips with Michael Hurley when he came on, and such a contribution, 4 points from play. Kieran McGeary had a goal marking him, and Rory Brennan had another goal. Like, you know, they were really struggling that way. So what happens in Omagh, how much do you read into that in a possible meeting down the line, or even like what they might produce in an All-Ireland semi-final?
Just when you mentioned the strength and conditioning and how powerful these Tyrone players look, our first half didn't work, but they brought on 3 absolute monsters in Mike Cassidy, Richie Donnelly and Pádraig Hampsey. Like, they're just never mind whether they can play football or not. These are monsters they're coming up with against, as you're tiring yourself, you know, from a Cork point of view.
Yeah, and their ability to go hard for long, like, is to be admired. Like, you know, Peter Hart won a free there in the second half that was men just bouncing off him, like, and yet still he was being fouled, and it's almost like because he's such a strong ball carrier, he is never of course he's not the size of Michael Murphy. Michael Murphy has to work hard for frees. Maybe there's a little bit of that with Peter Hart too.
Do you think that there's any element of relying too much on Peter Hart's Cathal McShane, who's very good inside, and Matty Donnelly as well, that, you know, today Niall Sludden can be very good, and I think he was really good last week.
Sludden was excellent. He scored 3 points in the first half and set up another 3 against Roscommon, yes, and possibly had a dip in form since the Super 8s last year. Was kind of carried over into the league a wee bit for him, but like he was really excellent over the last number of weeks. A bit quiet today, although when you drill down and look at it, like, he forced that turnover. He knitted together the first goal, and the second, it was he was taken down for the penalty. Like, so, I mean,
not Matty Donnelly taken down for the penalty. Donnelly, but
have to check that again.
We won't fight over that one.
no. I'll have to change the match report, I think.
Or else I will. But do you think there's any chance of being too reliant on a couple of players, or do you think there's a decent enough spread in that Tyrone team to mount the challenge again?
can you say that about every team? You know, how reliant are Kerry and Paul Geaney? How reliant are they as the Dubs on Paul Mannion? You take Paul Mannion in a team. How reliant are they on that? Like, I mean, you know, you're going to have the guys who influence any game they play in, and if they don't influence it, then the game is influenced as a result by them being quiet. So I don't know if it's a fair comparison.
Do you think that this idea that Tyrone, they tried to play more of a man-on-man against Donegal, they were exposed and beaten quite comprehensively, that now they've reverted to type, and therefore ultimately when it comes up to playing Dublin or whoever in the very latter stages, they're in the All-Ireland semi-final now, that ultimately it won't be good enough anyway, revert to type?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because, like, you know, Dublin was shaped by Sean Patton's kickouts. He found his man pretty much every time. I think it was 23 out of 24 restarts. But I mean, I was watching that game back and did a lot of kind of pausing just to study it. There was an element of the Tyrone players that weren't fully pressing. Like, you know, I mean, if there was 6 in defence, there might have only been 4 Tyrone forwards up actually sort of marking zonal rather than going man for man on that kick out. Well, people say they're going man for man. You know, Tyrone weren't truly going man for man in the strictest sense of it, but they were certainly keeping more people up front. Now, the last few minutes of I could be wrong, now more or less the last 8-9 minutes against Dublin in Omagh last year, they truly did press, and everybody was up for, and there was 4 men across the full forward line for the last number of kickouts, and that was really exciting because Tyrone were really hot in Dublin's tail at that time, and maybe there was a wee bit of that could have been brought into the All-Ireland final more. They were certainly at the start in the opening 20 minutes like they were doing that, but it's all, you know, Dublin put on their spurt. Paul Mannion got his penalty, didn't he? And, like, you know, the scoring spurt there just seemed to absolutely knock them all together. But I think later on in the game, the Tyrone put another wee push on. Like, so can they do it? Can they sustain something like that? Can they basically do what Cork did last week against Dublin and sustain it for 80 minutes? Yeah. It's hard to know.
I have a question about the kickouts. So, like, you'd studied Gaelic football a good bit and watched the games back. Do you think that more energy is expended in pushing up aggressively on kickouts or conceding kickouts and then having to chase a team for a couple of minutes in Dublin's case because they hold on to it for so long? Is it actually worth the gamble? I know the odd one will go against you, but is it nearly worth the gamble to push up almost every time if you can?
You push up every time, then you're stuck. You're stuck in behind, and with someone like Sean Patton, he's just got an enormous hoof of a ball, and he can. I mean, you've seen the game, was it last week, where Michael Murphy just climbs up and flicks it on Ryan McHugh, makes the dummy run back, he turns and he's away. And actually, like, you recall back to 2014, or even against Cork in 2012, where Neil Gallagher was winning all the kickouts from Paul Durkin, and the odd time then in 2014 it was he that was climbing high and flicking it on then to McHugh as well, which created I think the goal for Colin McFadden, not sure, but like that was a definite tactic then, and now Murphy has become that role that Neil Gallagher has, flicking it on to Ryan McHugh, and then chaos. But once you're in behind, it's total chaos, and it's all about composure and all about holding the ball long enough. The Donegal tactic against Dublin that day was to run the ball and be composed and run at them and don't kick it in, because at the time Dublin used to mark 2 yards in front of their man, and they used to love seeing that, a man kicking it, because you've already got a head start. Instead they carried, coming into the defenders, and then those overlaps coming everywhere. I don't know if Tyrone are all that sophisticated that they could try something like that. I don't know if their team play from kickouts is quite that good.
You know the way you say that Sean Patton can, like, he's a huge boot and can go long distance. Rory Beggan, like, we saw him last year in Clones,
it's in Clones,
45 almost.
That's right.
Do you think Stephen Cluxton can still do that? He's 37, 38. Does he have that distance? Because how frequently would he be even driving it long anymore anyway? Because so often they just go short and work.
But are teams afraid of it? Like, are teams afraid of it? And they possibly should, like, but you know, I mean, are they afraid that because you have someone as gifted as Brian Fenton in midfield that he might just kick it over the cover, and someone like Brian Fenton will not been beaten too many times in an athletic challenge jumping for the ball, and who do you put up against Brian Fenton in that instance? They're so unpredictable with their kickouts, and I remember it was Jim McGuinness's book, he was talking about studying the restarts with Dublin, and he said that after hours and hours, and you know how thorough he could be, like hours and hours of deciphering and plotting and areas where he was putting in. There was no pattern whatsoever. There was no, you see people, in hurling puckouts now, they highlighted a fella behind the goals telling him where to put it. There seems to be no pattern whatsoever with Dublin. They just seem to go on feel, or if they are predetermined moves, they're just so hard to find a tell.
As far as I know, sorry to cut across you, but as far as I know, they do have someone doing stats, and they will track where are you hitting the kickouts, where are we getting joy, where are we not.
Yes.
So if things start to break down, they might say, well, we won all three that we put out between the 45 and 65 on the right flank, so let's keep doing that. So I know that they are monitoring as they go along.
Well, wasn't it like was it Eamon Donoghue last year, and there's times that studied Stephen Cluxton's every kick out in the championship, and the ones that he really didn't like doing was to the right corner back, because he's kicking across his body. Himself, and that leads to less accuracy, or at least it seemed to. There was giving up the odd one there. It just wasn't panning out quite right. Like, you remember Niall Morgan's kickouts in All-Ireland final last year, and he had I haven't seen it this year, a very distinctive tell where he used to rub his two gloves down his jersey, and you knew then it was going long. And in that first half, Tyrone were what some people call stack and split. So you stack in an narrow column and then you shoot out either direction, and so you've got the space, the wings. But I mean, it's no secret. I mean, it's well highlighted. Dublin seen that and they reacted in game time and just went zonal. I think at one point too, J.O. made a run up to Stephen Cluxton to readjust his kick out in the same game. But I mean, it's where teams now are hurting each other. I mean, if you win the kick out, the kick out battle, you nearly always win the game now.
Yeah, it's true, and the amount of scores they get out of it. A word about Cork though. Again, second game in a row, like Dublin previous week, they started off like a house on fire. Started out like a house on fire here as well, with 7 points up early enough on. It felt like they were really patient on the ball in the first half. Second half, they just started to panic as well. So what's the difference between the first and second half for them, where they're building up a nice little lead but eventually tailing off a little?
I think the momentum is the only thing, I think, in that. I mean, talk about an adrenaline shot, a goal after 13 seconds, and the way it came straight down through the middle.
When Tyrone hadn't time to set up.
When Tyrone hadn't time to retreat all the bodies, like the half hours, the Kieran McCareys and all that were trying to get into their defensive positions, but it was all wide open. After that, I mean, they got a couple of Mark Collins frees, and then James Lockery was only on the pitch for 6 minutes and found the top corner. It was sensational. And when you're on top like that, everything seems to come a little bit easier. But when you concede 2-1 in 3 minutes, like, you talk about a blow to your confidence. And maybe Cork, as confident as they did appear in the first half here, and certainly against Dublin, maybe there's a little bit of frailty underneath all that.
Yeah, white line fever maybe a small bit.
Perhaps. I mean, development wise, how far are they? Like, Cork always seem to be sort of disjointed in terms of management, and we're being besieged here by seagulls. Cork, there never seems to be a great deal of continuity from one squad, or such a turnover of players and turnover of management figures and people in the backroom that it can be very difficult. That's one advantage Tyrone and definitely Dublin have. Is that the faces are more or less the same. There'll be a bit of tweaking in the background and all that. But if Cork are serious about themselves, they're definitely, they're absolute favourites to themselves and down maybe to come up. It's hard to believe, isn't it? That next year will be a 10-year anniversary of Cork and Down playing an All-Ireland final, and they'll be meeting in a Division 3 league fixture.
Which, if you were to do a 2-tier championship next year based on league results, Cork are down there, even though they're putting up these shown. Their starting forwards only got 3 scores from play. If you were told beforehand that Mark Collins would be taken off scoreless from play, that
Rory Dean's influence was completely negated by Conor Myler, in fairness.
Brian Hurley, who's just a lightning forward as well, that he wouldn't score from play and be taken off, but they'd still be that close to Tyrone.
Well, one thing about Brian Hurley, is the season that Rowan McNamee is enjoying at the moment. Dara McVitie, I don't know if he was taken off or not, but he certainly was second best to McNamee. Conor Cox was taken off last week. Markham McNamee, Brian Hurley, scoreless, taken off on Rowan McNamee. He's probably, and all
in games that were quite competitive. Well, not the Cavan one obviously, but in competitive games. So it's not like your team was all over the opposition, so your man never had a chance to get into it. So that's adding to what you're saying. Have we enough said there?
Jesus, I hope so.
Thanks, Declan.